So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Judith Sparhawk. I'm a member of the Redlands Art Association. Well, I have. That's not what I'm talking about, though. I've been a member of the Redlands Camera Club as well as the Art Association for like 25 years or so. And so I've been around the block quite a few times. And Bruce had asked me to speak tonight about publishing a book of your photography. And who in this room has already published a book, self-published a book? One, two.
Not the ones that like you make it Costco.
It can be. Costco doesn't do it anymore, but yeah. It can. Yeah, it's your you put together your photographs and put them in a book form, and they print it for you and so on. They can be. I'll talk a little bit about all of that. Yeah. Okay, so the idea of putting your photographs into a book where people can actually sit and look at them, read a little bit about what you've done and so on, is a whole different concept than sitting in front of a screen. Here's a phone, right? And you go, and then it's gone. You've lost it. I don't mean the person that owns it hasn't lost it, but the person is viewing it. It's a quick experience. And these days we like quick experiences, right? We don't want to spend too much time doing anything, but you don't have something you can go back to and look at and so on. So the idea of putting them in print form in something that you can have and show is really a nice thing. And I've done quite a bit of that in the last few years. So Bruce asked me if I would go ahead and talk about it. If you decide that you want to do a book, or even remotely possibly want to do a book, you're not quite sure yet if you want to do a book, there are a bunch of things that you should consider. I don't know if you can read all of that here. I made it as pretty large, but I can see it from here fine, but I'm not sure I could from the other side of the room. Sorry. It's good to have a clear vision about what it is that you want to do with the book. Why are you wanting to do a book? What do you want to do with it, and so on? What kind of book do you want it to be? Do you want it to be all photos? Do you want to have text, or a little bit of text, or a lot of text? And how will you use it? You know how often people say, well, what camera should I buy? Or what computer should I buy? And the first question that is asked is, well, how are you going to use it? What do you want to do with it? And so on. And so that's kind of the clue of what direction you want to go. It could be like use it as a portfolio. Like, here's a whole lot of my wonderful photos, and if you want to come over this side, that you can probably see better. I don't know if you can get through there. That's going to be a lot easier for you than trying. Yeah. Okay. You might want to use it as a portfolio, just to showcase your photography. You show it to customers or to clients of various kinds. You might want to be doing something as a gift for family or friends, so that you can have a night come Christmas time. Hey, I'm going to give everybody my book. So it's a lot of Christmas shopping, right? Just sell to customers, sell to the public. Those are also possible things. You may or may not want to do that. And just for your own personal satisfaction, you can go ahead and have a way to show off. I don't mean it in a really vain and conceited way, but it's a way to show your work and show what you've done. And so often we lose it when, how many of our photographs never get seen by anybody? How many of them, some we don't want people to see, but the ones that we would like people to see, they never get seen, they're never appreciated. No one even knows that you took this wonderful photo, because we don't have a really good way to show that. And there's only so many people are going to put stuff up on the wall, or even know that you make something that could be hung up on the wall, and so on. Next slide. Okay, if you're going to do a book, it makes a lot of sense to have some kind of theme that you want, or a story to tell, or something like that, rather than just, if you're doing it as a portfolio, you may want to just put a whole lot of photos in, just so, hey, this is what I do. But even then, it's good to sort of group the photos into categories or themes or sections in a book and so on. But if you're basically wanting to showcase your work, but why, and what's the message you want to give? What story do you want to tell? So yes, we want to showcase the photography, but what do you want to show or tell? Maybe you want to talk about a great vacation. Wayne did one on Iceland when he went to Iceland. Well, that's a pretty amazing trip. He's maybe done other ones. I'm not really sure, but anyway, that's it. But here it's an opportunity to put this together, open it up, and revisit Iceland all over again, and remember and stir up the memories and so on. And it's a little less invasive than having your slideshow that everybody has to come over and watch in the living room after dinner, whether they wanted to or not. Document an event like weddings or special occasions of various kinds. Weddings are one that people do a lot of, but there are lots of other family reunions. There's all kinds of occasions that you might want to record. And exploring a theme or a message. A lot of us have a particular interest, a certain something that we like to do with our photography. Look at the people that do all this great bird photography. Imagine the book that Deborah Dorothy could put together with all of her great bird photographs that she's done. Other wildlife, landscapes. There's Rick with his landscape photography. Imagine a really wonderful book of Rick's landscape photography. That'd be really great. Photography, flowers, portraits, any special interests that a person has that you take a bunch of pictures of, and here's a way to put them together so you're showing what your experience was when you were there with the things. Or illustrate stories with your photographs. I've got a little bit more into that in my more recent work, where the writing has actually been more important sometimes than the actual photographs, which is kind of interesting because it used to be the other way around. Here's the photographs, and well, I'll say a little bit of something about that. But I've done a lot more writing in the more recent times, and it's really a nice way to illustrate what it is that you're trying to express in your writing. Next slide.
I wasn't supposed to be there.
I know. Okay. So say you've decided, well, I don't know if I want to go to all that work. It sounds like a lot of work to do this thing, but it sounds interesting. I started out, the first book that I did because somebody I knew had done one. I thought, well, that sounds like fun. So I put a bunch of photos in and so on. I kind of learned this better to go in a little bit more forethought and a little more planning than I did for the first one. But probably the first place is to research the self-publishing companies for photographers. And there's a lot of them out there. I've done research in quite a few of them, but each individual person may have their own things that they're interested in, their own needs that want to be met, and they're doing it. So it makes sense to do your own research and look and see which place seems to meet your needs for what you want to do. So there are a lot of companies out there, and the things to consider when you're trying to make decisions on things is which companies have the book sizes that you're interested in. There's differences in binding. One of the things that they're now, they didn't used to do, but I especially think of this with your and so on. They call the lay flat binding that opens up like this, so you can have your great panorama that goes right across the page, and you haven't lost anything by being in the binding and so on. Cover types, types of paper that you can use. There, companies have just a couple of versions of paper, you know, the standard and the premium, something like that. Some of them have all kinds of stuff. They have glossy, they have matte that is real thick, and they have, I mean, there's a lot of different versions that you can choose, but you don't know that until you kind of check out which companies you're interested in. And of course, you have to look at pricing. There's some variation in price. You have to be aware that when they talk about, you can make a book for as little as $12.99 or something like that, chances are that's not going to have very many pages in it. And chances are it may or may not be the quality that you're interested in. And it depends what you're wanting to do. If it really matters a lot, what quality you're doing. I mean, if you're doing one book only and it's your portfolio that you're going to show to everyone, you may want to have the leather cover and, you know, all that sort of stuff. Most of the time, you know, it's better to be in the mid-range somewhere. but the pricing varies a lot. It's not cheap. You're not going to find the type of, we call it a POD company, the print on demand. That means you can have just one made, or you can make 100 or 1,000 or whatever it is that you want. But the idea of being able to only have 1 or 2 or 5 books made, rather than like the old vanity presses where you had to have order 1,000 or 2,500 or something like that in order to have the book even considered for publication. This gives you an opportunity to have it exactly the way you want it. You can order like one with a hard cover, one with a soft cover, one with a fancy something or other else cover, and that way you can have the option for the various uses that you're going to have. It's important to acknowledge your level of photo processing and computer literacy. If you're just barely getting started, you may not yet be able to do anything fancy with your photographs, but you should be able to handle cropping and adjusting for various things like light and color and so on, sharpness. As far as computer literacy, there are some of the programs, some of the companies that all you really have to do is upload your photos to the company and drag and drop them into different templates and things like that. And if that's all you're doing, it doesn't take a whole lot of know-how to do it, and they'll kind of usually help you if you're having a problem with it and so on. There are others that you're like, most of the companies have you upload and drag and drop. And then Blurb is the company that I've always used. And that's one where you actually download the software onto your own computer and you create your book on your own computer in your own time. This is what I really like, is that you can spend weeks and weeks working on this thing if you need to. If it's a complicated thing, and there's a lot of writing, and there's a lot of changes that you need to make and things of that sort, it's really much more customizable than something where you're dealing entirely with something that's on their website and so on. So that's been my preference to do it, but there are other ways that you can as well. But it does take more computer know-how to do that than it does to drag and drop. So it's really a matter of acknowledging what you can and can't do and being ready to accept that responsibility. Slide. Okay, I just have a few of the self-publishing companies listed here. One is Lulu. These are 3 different ways to put it this way. Lulu is one I hadn't even heard of it, but I did research it after I heard about it. And it's one where you can work on your own computer at home. You complete your book, you format it, you do it however you want using different types of software. And then you go ahead and upload it to the company and they print it. Blurb is sort of in the middle there, where you download the software and then you create the book on your computer, and then you after being really proofing it, doing all the things that you need to do, you go ahead and have it printed. And then the Snapfish, Shutterfly, and MPix are 3 well-known companies that have a lot of various options when it comes to doing it. These are the ones that you upload the photographs to their website and then do all the creation of the book on the website. But you want to make sure that if it's whatever you're choosing, if you want to do things like titles and captions and various bits of text, that it's a program that allows you to do that. Because otherwise, I don't know if you've ever had a book of great photographs and you go through it and you're looking at it, maybe it's little great landscapes, and it doesn't tell you anything about them. There's no title, there's no backstory, there's no anything that describes what the photographer's experience was in doing it and so on. And it's a little frustrating because you just look at it and you don't know anything about it. And personally, I like to know stuff about the photographs that I'm looking at. So that's something to be aware of, just to be sure that you've got the option to put in text if you wish to have that. But all of these companies have a fairly wide range of sizes, covers, things like that. Some of the ones that you upload to the website, they have themed books. So you can, they actually have various things printed on the pages that may or may not fit with your photographs and so on. But you have the option to choose what you want to use, all that. Next one. Okay, once you've chosen the company, you decided what you're up for and how much you can do, you choose the size of the book. And we've talked about that a little bit, but the for example, in Blurb, they have a little 7-inch square book, you know, not very good for Rick's photo landscapes, right? It might be great for, you know, the story of a little baby that was born or something like that, but you want to have something for your landscapes and other things. You want some real space to be able to show the work and so on. The books, the size that I've always used is 8 by 10 landscape, and they also have 8 by 10 that's the portrait. So if you're, whatever you're doing is better to do this way instead of this way, it's possible to do that. I don't think I'm supposed to be on here. Oh, okay. Okay, I'll be doing more of that. That's right. Depending on the company, after you made those decisions, depending on the company, you would go ahead, upload your photos, or make the book online, or go ahead and do it on your own computer. Important things: be super selective about the photos that you use. It's very tempting to put in this one and this one and this one and this one. It's like, it's really, it's you're going to be representing yourself in this book, so it's really important that you choose the things carefully, that you are selective, that you crop it right, that you adjust for color and brightness and things like that, so that when it comes down to actually being printed, you'll be proud to see it, as opposed to think, oh shoot, did I put that one? I can't believe I put that one in, and so on. Some people say that slight over sharpening is good, because when you print it on your paper like this, it softens it some. I've never done that, but I've heard it. I don't know. Use high resolution digital files. You want 300 dpi for printing. And selecting your cover photo is really important, because this is going to represent your book. And if you want, especially if you're trying to sell it, you really want something that's going to be intriguing and eye-catching and so on. Bruce made a comment when he saw my books here. He said, "Oh, you really like color, don't you?" Yeah, I do. I have to admit, I really love color. So selecting the cover photo is important, and also think about adding titles, captions, descriptions, and so on, whether it's to the cover or things that are inside. Next slide. Okay, so you want your book to look pretty good when you get done. There's not too much point in doing it if you're not going to be happy with it when it's done. So you want it to be as professional as possible. And so if nothing else, you can go look at a bunch of books out there in the world and see how they put them together. What did they do? A title page is good, because that sort of leads off the whole book. You should have a copyright page, or somewhere in there it should have a copyright. So it says, hey, copyright by, you usually have the date, like the year. And that way it says, yes, this is mine and it belongs to me. Don't steal it. Introduction, if you choose to have one. A dedication page, if you choose to have one. Page numbers. I haven't really done page numbers in mine, and I probably should. I haven't quite decided to do that, so I haven't. But especially depending if you're wanting to find section 3 and what's in section 3, it's good to be able to say, oh, it's on page 32 or something like that. It's something I just haven't really gotten into. A lot of my books have a lot of poetry and stuff. I'm not really usually looking for the certain page for whatever. Again, choose a cover design, photo, colors, fonts. I learned the hard lessons on some of these things by the way I started out doing my books, and learned some that, at least for me, I found ways that it works a little bit better. So I'll talk a little bit about those. Use consistent margins and headings. I'm a little guilty on this one. If you're doing a lot of writing in your book, I have sometimes had to, ooh, I just really got to fit the rest of this poem on the page. And so it goes a little lower than the one did before. But, you know, poetry's a little, you know, different sizes, different shapes. So you can get away with it a little bit better than if you're writing a novel, you want all the top first lines supposed to be in the same place on every page in that novel and so on. Okay. So my own experiences with self-publishing. I was going to just talk about the different books that I've done. And I've published 8 books in the last 13 years. And every single one of the books was different and came from a different space in my head and for a different purpose. And mainly I want to just explain how in the process, number one, you learn a lot from doing the one before and doing the one before that and so on. But also that it doesn't have to be any particular way, because it's your book and you can put in what you want and you can make it exactly the way that you'd like it to be. And so this is my first one. This is the one that I did in 2009. And you can actually go to the next one when they're ready, although he's doing that. In 2009, I did this book. It's called The Spiral Dance Visions Along the Way, which I thought sounded like a pretty highfalutin title. I didn't really know exactly what I was doing. And so I made some mistakes with this book. I started out doing full photo covers, and they look kind of neat because they're bold and, you know, all that. But it's really hard to put very much writing on them that's going to show up very well, because you have to work around the different elements in the photograph. And for this one, actually for the second one as well, I used a font that was really a bad font to be using, especially for the cover. I can't remember the name of this particular font right now, but it's kind of thin. You can't really read it very well. It's not bold enough to really be able to see well, and especially when you're printing on top of a photograph. So I kind of learned that was probably not the way. It took me 2 books to learn it, but I kind of learned. And so in this way, in this particular book, I was mostly doing close-up photography at the time. And so that's pretty much what was in the book. And so I had a lot of flowers. I had things. I had my it's just some of my favorite photos at the time. Some of them were from film even. So it goes back quite a long way. I used the pages were white. And later I started using colored pages, but they were white. And I used some of them, I used a few embellishments that were built into the program. And I was trying to see if I could find, I did a whole section on flowers, including my centerfold. Not the centerfold that most people are looking for when they look at the book. So anyway, it was just it was fun. Somebody I knew had done one. I thought, oh, that sounds like a fun thing to do. My images weren't probably the highest quality they could have been, and it was just kind of an experiment. And I was really happy with it. I was really proud of it. And I look back on it now and I think, well, there were some things that could have been done better, but that's the way it goes sometimes. If you just run through, I have a few images from inside the book. If you just keep moving through them, these are just some of the things that were included in. Go on. One more, that one. Okay, you go to the next one. Yeah. Oh, thanks. Even if I'm saying, hey, I'm not that happy with the images I used, they weren't bad, right? Okay. The second book I did was the next year, and I kind of hurried up to do it because I was dedicating it to my writer Norman Corwin on his 100th birthday. And his 100th birthday came around. I had to hurry up and get the book done. He was a creative writing instructor of mine for over several years, and I decided I really owed him some writing. I got away from the writing and started doing photography and things like that for my creativity. And so I decided that it was time that I gave him some writing. And so that was what this one started out as. And I have here the sort of the theme, the idea. I talked about choosing a theme for the book. This is early. I learned to love this earth and the wanderlust to seek its riches. This is a celebration of what has captured my heart on this long vagabond journey. So that's where the captured heart comes from. And this is an image of mine that was a glass heart that was in a square jar and so on. And so that was the kind of the idea. The heart is inside there and so on. But what I did for this one, basically, I just talked about, I did it with poetry. It was the first time I started doing poetry, but I had some like images from, everyone recognizes this arch, right? And my snowy owl that I flew all the way to Colorado to see. And I have a whole bunch of different things, but they were all, I wrote poems to go with the photographs. And then I did go ahead. So my title page was basically like my cover was. And then my dedication page was for Norman Corwin. This is a picture that had some of his books underneath my glasses and so on. You may recognize this as having, well, you may not recognize it, not enough of it shows, but this was taken in the walkway at the A.K. Smiley Library when nobody was there, so I could set up my photography and do it and so on. So this one came a lot more from my experiences and expressing in writing and also in the photography, some of the experiences I had that were really meaningful to me, and went to my old writing instructor. You could maybe show the next few. There's one from Bryce of the pier. That's San Juan Island in the Puget Sound, and the fox that was there, and a big old gray barn that was out by Forks, Washington. So anyway, there's a few of the things that are in here that I wrote about and showed the photographs and so on. My third book was completely different. It's called Redlands from A to Z. And I actually had been planning on doing a different book. This is kind of things happen the way they seem to be, they want to happen in my life. So I was planning on a different book. I had ideas of things I wanted to do. And then by darn, the 125th anniversary of Redlands' existence came up, and okay, so I'm going to do a Redlands book instead. So this is called Redlands A to Z, and it has photographs. Well, we've all seen a million photographs of Redlands, but it shows photographs of different iconic places in Redlands, and then a little bit of writing about the historic significance or the background of those places. So we do, things that we've all seen. So it's A was Assistencia, B was the bowl, and so on. I went all the way through to Z. And this is the first time that I used colored pages. And I found that was really a lot of fun to have things that would kind of complement. Here's Kimberly Crest, so kind of complement the photographs. And it was a lot more fun than the plain old white pages that I had kind of been using before. And so this one, the least personal of my books, because it was all about something out there and had little to do with me. And it's been, of course, been the bestseller because Redlands people love Redlands stuff. So I've sold more of this than certainly any of my other books. I'm not trying real hard to sell them, so it's not really a big deal. But this is one that has been my biggest success, my least personal and significant to me. But hey, can't complain. It's a moneymaker. So if you could go through just a few of the photos that are in there. All places that we recognize. Okay. All right. So after that, I started working on the book that I meant to be doing when Redlands got in the way. And so this one was in 2015. So it's the Redlands was 2013. So this was 2 years after. And it seemed like a really long time coming because I've been thinking and working on it in my mind, if not somewhere else, for about 5 years. And so it's called Woman, Heart, Spirit, Living by the Moon. And it's very female-oriented book, sort of coming very much from a sense of the feminine and the various ways that this is represented for me anyway. And so I had a whole lot of different photos in here that I had poetry that went with. I don't consider myself a very great poet, but sometimes when I want to write about something, that seems to be the way it comes out. So like I said, I let the book do what it wants me to do. And it's I've sometimes, said, hey, that wasn't what I planned at all. And yet it's turned out, it works out the way it is and so on. So I had some things like, places that I had been, but very, again, I used the colored pages that I thought really complemented the photographs. And a lot of Native American influence in this one, which is kind of interesting because people say, oh, Sparhawk, that's a Native American name, right? I said, no, it's an Old English name, as a matter of fact, back in falconry days and so on. But it's just, it's there's a lot of color, there's a lot of things that just mean something to me. And so this was probably one of my more favorite books when I first started out doing it. And it was just really a lot of fun. Bruce, do you want to go ahead and just run through some of the photos? That is a composite. That is too. You see, I'm starting, that is too. Okay. All right. So this one was in 2015. And for about the last 3 years after that, I started thinking, I really feel like doing another book. I really feel like doing another book. And of course I didn't. And I just couldn't kind of get the time together, or the inspiration and the time together at the same time, and so on. And so 2020 happened. All of a sudden I had time during lockdown and all of that. All of a sudden there was plenty of time to do stuff. So what I was going to do, I thought, was do a book that was more like a portfolio. Anyway, and all of a sudden it was a whole different book that I was writing, and using the photographs and so on. And this is called Threads of Life, Celebrations, and it actually turned out to be more of a memoir, which is not exactly where I started at all. It wasn't what I expected to do and so on. The idea of threads of life had to do with all the different things that happen in our lives that act as threads to come together to weave the fabric of our lives and so on. And so that was kind of the original theme, but it went back. Oh, and I had all kinds of things talking about when my kids were born, and we're talking, that's a lot of years ago. My kids are, well, I shouldn't say, but my my oldest one's 60, so it's quite a long time ago that I had. So, but it brought up a whole lot of old stuff, and it was very, very cathartic to write all of this. This is definitely the most personal one. I'm not sure, when I did this one, I had somebody say, wow, you're really brave to say some of those things in that book. And I'm thinking, what did I say that was that brave? Well, this was a little braver, a little braver yet. So anyway, but I did is different, your hardcover is different, you know, and so on. So each one is a little bit different. So it's customized for whatever somebody orders. So if somebody orders something, a soft cover, then that's what they get. It's, you know, it gives you some options available and so on. But this one was just a completely different thing. It was very personal, and it just gave me an opportunity to say stuff. And it's both prose and poetry. Both. It's and then the last section was completely different. That last section is that my book series. I know some of you know that I was doing over a period of quite a long time. I was doing a series in celebration of books, and the idea that you know, all the reading we do on screens, you know, or electronic readers and things like that. I just hate the thought of books disappearing into the sunset and so on. So I did this whole thing that had to do with the celebration of books. And some of these Camera Club people have seen, because I've shown some of these at different places and things like that. But this was just a whole little section that was completely different from everything else that was in the book. So there's nothing that says a book has to look okay. So after I finished that one, I got busy on the one that I had intended to do originally, which is more like the I really don't want to call it a portfolio, but it's the thickest one I've ever done. Had lots and lots and lots of photographs in it, and it not very much writing for change. You know, shut her up, hurry up, shut her up. So it has tons and tons of photographs, and a lot of them are just, some of them are in different themes. I have a section called Emergence, which has to do with my sense of women as they emerge from one phase of life to another. And so I had a lot of photographs involving with that. I have one called Hands Across the World, which is a series that I did of photographing hands. I have a section on fantasy, because I like to do kind of funny, silly fantasy things. And then one section that was all-time favorites, just a lot of different things that I put in. And then section 2 actually was the pandemic. And this came out a year after the original lockdown. And it seemed like it didn't make sense to do a book that did not include information about the pandemic, to sort of document some of that and so on, with photography and with writing. And so the majority of the writing that's in this book is in the section on the pandemic, because of the importance of it actually in our lives, the way it affected us, something that none of us hadn't been experienced for 100 years, and lest we forget. I kind of look at it like that. It's even now, we look back when in the middle of lockdown and we remember that it was, but we're not in the experience so much now. and it really, it seemed like it was important to do. So that's included in this one as well, because this one came out a year after the original lockdown. So if you could just show the next few, these are just a few of the photos in it. It's made painterly. It's been made painterly, but it was the original photograph, as was that. You guys have seen this one. Yes. Yes. I went out to shoot the moon that was going to be rising, and by darn, look at the clouds that were there. Yeah. 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 I was very excited about that. This is some of the pandemic. Yeah. Okay. So I know this probably seems like it's taking a really long time to go through all the various different things that I did. The next year, I came out with this one called Longings and Journeys, Living Wild and Free. And so this was kind of getting past the worst of the pandemic and beginning to feel like you're getting alive again and you're really doing some things. And so it included some things having to do with travel. What, we got to go somewhere? Can't believe it. Travel. It actually started out with a short story, and I hadn't really been doing short stories, but started out with a short story that I felt compelled to write. The idea came into my head and it wouldn't leave me alone. And so I finally started writing it. And so I did continue writing it, and I used different photographs to illustrate the story. And so that was how this one actually began. And then I use the color photographs, color pages with the photographs, and included different things that were significant to me at that particular time. And then I waited. The book was all ready except for one last section, and I wanted to do a section on my experience of photographing the wild horses at Salt River in Arizona. And so I had the book all ready to go except for the part about the Salt River. And then I went down there, and I didn't have very much time. And I was down there for part of a day after I got down there and got down to the Salt River, and I didn't find any horses. And then I went the next day and went out and around and around and around. I looked at all the likely places, and I was determined I was going to find some horses. By the end of the day, still no horses. And I thought, what am I going to do for the last section of my book? So anyway, went out the next day, and I started seeing horses all over the place, which was really wonderful. And I photographed horses in 5 different locations and so on. And so this last section of this book is sort of the story of that experience that I had, documented almost like in timeline. Like starts out Sunday 7:30 a.m. when I'd already been on the road for 3 or 4 hours and stuff like that. And then the point when I actually found horses, and it was so exciting. And it became actually truly almost a spiritual experience for me, interacting with the horses and experiencing that and seeing them in the wild and so on. And I have, got some really happy experiences with the horses and so on. So I finally got the last section of my book. Yay! I was able to actually take it to press and so on. And so anyway, that was the one that I did in 2021. And you actually have seen this picture in a competition one time. It's on the front and the back. So this time I did a little bit differently. Instead of having this rectangular picture here, I went ahead and ran the picture all, but back and front and so on, wrote here quite a bit. So it gave me an opportunity to say what I wanted to say, as well as show the photographs and my experiences and so on. So if you want to run through a few of those. This is from the short story. That one is too. and that one. Guess where that is? Right before I was leaving this one place, that there were a bunch of horses that were up on this hillside up above Lake Saguaro, and they were very docile. And I was wandering around the hillside. You're not supposed to get too close to them. I was wandering around, and not in and among, but close enough that I could take photos and so on. And they were just kind of really very quiet and placid and so on. Now, when Rick was there, it was during mating time and stuff. There was a lot of action going on. There wasn't a lot of action at this particular time. But it was really wonderful to see them and photograph them and so on. And just when I got out to my car in the parking lot and I looked back, and here, could you go back? Yeah, and here the horses were suddenly in battle. It only took like 3 seconds. I only got 2 shots off in the process, but anyway, I actually saw some action with the horses. So that was kind of a fun way to end the day for that. So, okay, now we're getting finally down to my last book. This one just came out in November of this last year, and I wanted to get it done in time for Christmas. And it's completely different from everything else that I've done. It was fun. It's called The Secret Life of Cats, and Year of the Cat. And it turned out, this is in China, this is the Year of the Rabbit. But I found out after I had done this that in Vietnam, it's the Year of the Cat. So, phew. Anyway, so I took the book, just so you think, a soft cover of it, and this is the hard cover of it. So there's a real difference in the way they look. Some people want the soft cover because it's cheaper, but other people recognize that this has a little more, a little more weight to it, and makes it look a little bit more official and more professional and so on. But this is like the same book, but soft and hard cover. Anyway, so I'm not quite sure what got me. I kind of know what got me started on this cat book, but when I was doing the book series, I began noticing quite a few of the book series photographs ended up with cats showing up in them. And when I had been visiting my granddaughter in Canada, the cats thought that my room was their room. And so they spent a lot of time in there. I had a camera, so I started taking pictures. And before I knew it, I had a nice little collection of photographs of the cats. And then bit by bit, thanks for coming, Jerry. Good night. And so bit by bit, I began doing different composites that included the cats. And instead of, and then I started, oh, well, I didn't have enough cats because my granddaughter only has 4 cats, right? So only has 4 cats. And so I started photographing cats everywhere I could. Every time I'd see a cat and it would let me, I would photograph it. So I have a huge collection of a library of cats on my computer now that I can pull out for various occasions and so on. And so this particular book is very whimsical. It has some short stories in it that were all about cats. And those are the things that I wrote. I had trouble getting into the mind of a cat, but I finally did, I think. And so anyway, it's just filled with the stories and with lots of fun composites of cats doing various things. I did dedicate this book to my granddaughter, Emily, whose cats first started me out on this journey. And on her birthday, I also wanted to get it, it came out in October because her birthday's in October. I wanted to get it done in time for her. And she was very thrilled. Her grandmother had this book and it was dedicated to her, and grandma signed it, and it had her cats in it, So anyway, it was kind of a treat that way. But it's kind of silly in a way when you stop and think about it. This is in one of the stories. here's this woman. This woman, I've put her in quite a few different photographs in different ways. And here she's got these cats all over her and so on. And it's part of the story that's being told in this process. And then there's the catnip tea party. I don't know if you can see that one or not, but it's just really a fun. Here's the bird watchers. You see, the cats are out there looking at the birds and so on. So it's just a fun, whimsical. I mean, I've said some of my books are really serious, you know, and they're deep and introspective and all that sort of stuff. And this is just the opposite of that. It's just really for fun. And yet a couple of stories are a little touching and so on. It's kind of good can be good for kids. But anyway, this is one of my favorites. You'll see this one up on the screen too. This is this one actually. This image won third place in a competition, believe it or not. Anyway, but you can show a few of the things that I have here for the cats. That's one. Here, this guy. There's the tea party. There's the lady with all the cats. Okay, so those are the books that I've done. And one of the things I was trying to illustrate is the variety that you can do. You know, you don't have to do 8 books, for heaven's sake. You don't have to do any books. You don't have to do anything at all. But for me, it's really fun. I got a nice little library here. They're good gifts for friends and family. And they kind of, if you look at them from 2009 to 2022, actually, because that's when the last one went out. There's a lot of change and a lot of variety in who I am and what I do in my photography and in my writing and things like that. So it's an opportunity to have something that no one else can do. No one else can do your photographs. Nobody else can write whatever it is that you want to write and so on. And when Jim goes up in the Sierras and takes all these great pictures, you could actually put them together into a book. Maybe he already has, I don't know. When Rick goes out and does his, he may not want to do a book, but you can imagine what a beautiful even coffee table book you could do with some of the photographs that you've had and things like that. And anyway, that's what I had for you. I hope that you've learned some stuff, and I hope I haven't taken too much time. Yes.